What's up guys, Ryan Von Adler back here with another video for you. Today I want to do something a little bit different. So I was watching YouTube and one of my favorite channels, Rhett Shull, actually posted a video that I thought was really interesting because it was a video about Takamine acoustics, like the old lawsuit Japanese made guitars back from the 70s and the 80s. And it's funny because I have never seen anybody else talk about them. Obviously, if you guys have been to Guitar Center, Takamine is still a brand that exists, but if you guys didn't know, they were one of the companies back in the 70s and 80s, like I said, that was out of Japan making a bunch of guitars that were basically just copies of Martins, Gibsons, and probably some other stuff around there, but those are the two ones that I know. And there was a lawsuit that basically happened because they were infringing on trademarks, infringing on copyright, and all that kind of stuff. So this is the same era where there were a bunch of Les Pauls that like Ibanez was charged with doing. What's interesting about these guitars is that they're really affordable. So if you guys have ever looked on Reverb or gone into Guitar Center or anything like that, you know that if you get a vintage Martin, something from that same decade, you're paying anywhere from, $2,500, $3,000 on up, depending on the quality, depending on the model and everything like that, or depending on the condition rather. But for some reason, the Takamines and some of the other lawsuit guitars haven't really caught up in price. So why I thought it was funny was I actually have one of those guitars in my collection. So this is a 1978 Takamine. It is an SD, it's an F350SD. Now the SD basically just means that it's a sunburst finish, but this guitar I've actually pretty much grown up with. It's my dad's guitar, or was my dad's, I don't know, it bounces back and forth. But he's had this since about the mid 90s and he got it secondhand, paid about $300 for it back in, like I said, 94, 95. And it's a guitar that I always grew up seeing on the shelf and I always thought it looked cool. I always thought it sounded really cool. And as I got into guitar, once I got a little bit older, I realized that it's just a great feeling guitar. And I think they're really underrated because anything from that era, I think there is something magical about it. Not necessarily that it was made in that decade, but what's really interesting about wood, or rather wooden instruments, is part of the reason that people really love vintage guitars is you think about, we're made out of wood, and whenever the manufacturers are making them, they let the wood dry out to a certain level. They want a certain level of moisture in the wood before they start the production to make sure everything settles so you don't have any warps or anything like that. But because wood's a natural resource and it's something that's living, it continues to change as time goes on. So with wood specifically, the longer you have it, the longer it's out, the longer it's cut, it dries out. All those resins, the sap that's still in the wood continues to crystallize, which gives us a little more resonance. Because if you think about normally anything that's a little bit denser, a little bit harder has more resonance. So if you bang on a table versus banging on a piece of wood that you just cut down, you're going to have a little more knock. There's a little more substance there. You get more overtones out of it. And especially with guitars, specifically, I think acoustic guitars, you just get a little bit more kind of a warmth to it as the guitar ages. Now this one, definitely a lot of kind of that lower mid-range, a lot of bass frequencies, which again is something that Rhett mentioned in his videos. There's not a ton of top-end sparkle in this guitar. And I think part of that is the construction. It is kind of just a darker guitar to begin with, but also it's something that's been around for, at this point, 50 years, I guess, almost 45 years since it's the 78. So it's had a lot of time to dry out, a lot of time to really settle in and just kind of marinate almost. But this is a really interesting one. It's all completely stock except for the bridge pins. Unfortunately, those have all been replaced because the original white ones just cracked. The amount of times you pull it out and have to restring it and stuff like that. The other downside is, I don't know if this is going to show up very well on camera, but there's actually a crack right here down the top of the soundboard. And I haven't had a chance to get this repaired, to get it fully cleated. The bridge was actually lifting away, so I just got it back from a luthier a couple weeks ago. got that re-glued, and hopefully I'll be able to send it back soon to get some cleats in there so that it doesn't get any worse. So it affects the resonance just a little bit, but it's still just a great guitar. It's a fun one to play. I'm just kind of moving around on some random chords there. But why I wanted to do a video about this is, like I was saying, if you look at trying to get a vintage Martin or a vintage Gibson, you're going to pay a couple $1,000s. These guitars really haven't caught up to that. So if you look on Reverb, or I think Guitar Center has a couple of them as I'm making this video, you can get one for as low as about $450, which adjusted for inflation is actually less than my dad paid for this back in the 90s. So I think that's kind of funny. But if you're really looking for an old school guitar, because like I was saying, they sound different. Not only do they sound different, there's mojo, there's character to it. Personally, I love guitars that are kind of beaten up. They have their buckle rash and their road scars and all that kind of stuff, because it just means that somebody played that guitar. And it's always kind of fun for me to think about what songs were played on this, what has this guitar seen. And considering this guitar was 20 years old at the time my dad got it, it's probably been, it's been to some shows. It's been in a bunch of different people's hands. It's seen some stuff. So it's always kind of fun. You pick it up and it just, it wants to speak to you. These are incredibly well-made guitars. I would honestly put any of the old Japanese guitars, even the new Japanese guitars, right up there in terms of quality with the American-made things. So whether we're talking like Fender just did the reissue for the Stratocaster, the made in Japan, amazing build quality. And there's just something about it. Probably the age, but also maybe it's just me, like my inner heart, they just love something that's old. It likes to know that there's some nicks on there. It likes to know there's some history. But, I just wanted to go ahead and pull this one out and show a little bit more because, like I said, Rhett, I'll link his video down in the description, did an amazing job on it. He actually ended up picking up one for himself and he absolutely loved it. So I thought it was really cool to see somebody else that really enjoyed this guitar, considering that, I've seen it for 25 years at this point, and I've never really seen a lot of people having these. I've actually never seen another sunburst one. All the other ones that I've seen is just the natural spruce top. So this one's kind of cool just for that, for that fact. That's gonna go ahead and do it for this one. Didn't want to do anything super crazy here, but if you guys have any questions, whether it's on this guitar or anything in general, please don't hesitate to put those down in the comment section. Let me know what you guys thought about it. Like I said, it's a little bit darker, so if that's what you're looking for, it's great. If you're looking for something that's a little more kind of top end, a little sparkly or something like that, you might be better off going with something else. But you can never go wrong having one of these in your collection. And for $450, I'd say you're better off getting one of these than pretty much anything that at that price range. It's brand new off the shelf. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.